Does it work? Yes. Hello, everybody. No, it works.
Just started talking.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So it's a real pleasure to be here today, finally, after some travel hiccups, and to share this this conversation, especially following the previous one, the previous panel, which asked the question, what is quality in translation, right? So a concept, quality, that I'm sure you will agree with me, is perceived many times as subjective, inward-looking, hard to measure. So today, we will continue this exploration with my dear panel members by focusing on one of the few objective and measurable building blocks of quality, which is terminology. So, because terminology, you know, when terminology is neglected, quality collapses. And this is visible in many areas. Consistency suffers, undermining clarity, as we could hear this morning, for example. Trust is eroded, knowledge is lost over time as well, and legal certainty can be compromised, for example, in patent translation or legislation, you know, where one mistranslated term can cause a lot of damage for rights and obligations. And last but not least, brand identity can be jeopardized. So today we will look beyond the glossary cliché, because terminology is not about, you know, making term lists, but it has evolved over time in data management at the very heart of translation workflows. Also, you know, structured terminology now strengthens AI workflows, reducing ambiguity, but also providing the human validated anchors that automation cannot guarantee alone. So in this sense, I would say that terminology isn't bypassed by AI, but actually is key, and it matters to all of us, both seasoned and emerging professionals, because we have to remember that in the future, quality will also, and terminology, will also be for those who can manage the data behind it. So now I will stop monopolizing the microphone, and I would like to introduce my dear panelists, starting with Cristina Valentini, who is the head of the terminology unit at the World Intellectual Property in Geneva. Hello, Cristina.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody.
And Jourik CIESIELSKI, Chief Technology Officer at Elan Languages and renowned language technology expert, and RZEWUSKA-WALIGÓRA, Head of the Data Management Unit at European Commission's Director General for Translation. So it's wonderful to have you here, or there as well. So let's start us off with the very first question. So what does terminology management mean in your own field today? And why does it remain basically a foundation of quality? Who would like to start?
I'm off. I mean, you called my name before in the introduction. So just to remind you the story of terminology, when it used to be a terminology unit in DGT, and now, guess what? It's part of the data management unit. So I think this is not a mistake, and we are definitely going there. What is terminology and how it is seen? It's one of the core businesses of DGT. So it's definitely not accidental byproduct or something that we could, people who are out of the business could think that, okay, somebody writes some little terms somewhere on a post-it and to help not to forget. So luckily these times are over. So we'll be talking more about data management. So there we go. Jourik?
I'm going to answer this question from a pure technology perspective, but it's very, very important. I've been in language technology for 13 years now. Today I'm CTO. I'm responsible for implementing AI and driving innovation within my organization, and terminology today is even more prominent than it used to be back in the days, and that actually means something, because in the current AI climate, a lot of the things that we have been doing and using over the years are being questioned, are under siege, or being criticized. You know, the translation memory, the CAT tool, the single sentence paradigm, and many more things. Meanwhile, nobody is questioning the usefulness of terminology, and that actually means something. That's a very important observation here. Now, I'm a technology enthusiast, and I'm going to make a very dangerous statement here, so please don't start booing me, but I actually believe that LLMs are very, very good at processing terminology. I've done a lot of experiments, you know, doing terminology-oriented work, and I'm seeing a lot of value in the fusion between AI and terminology. There are many use cases. Think of terminology extraction, think of terminology evaluation, think of augmenting terminology with context and metadata, think of implementing terminology in machine translation output, etc., and so on. So I'm really excited about everything that's happening nowadays. Now, I do want to add something slightly negative to this. So despite my optimism, we have to deal with a legacy. And let me explain this a little bit. I will give you an example from the neural machine translation era, where all of a sudden, all of the MT model providers started releasing glossary features, you know, and they were promoting it as if it was some kind of deep customization of machine translation models, while in reality, it was nothing but static one-to-one search and replace operations. And this contributed to the negative perception that we have today around AI and terminology and MT. So my conclusion here is I'm super enthusiastic and super optimistic about everything that is terminology and AI, but we have to deal with some kind of legacy from the past.
Thank you. Valentina? Cristina?
Yes. Super happy to hear that in DGT terminology is now part of the data management unit. And I was there 23 years ago, exactly there as a terminology trainee. So for me, it's deep diving into my past today. But I want to tell you what we do now at WIPO. WIPO is the World Intellectual Property Organization. It's a United Nations specialized agency. It's a technical agency. And its mission is to protect the ideas and the rights of creators and inventors worldwide using a variety of legal instruments, one of which is our patents, okay? And the terminology unit in which I work is part of the PCT translation division. PCT stands for Patent Cooperation Treaty, which is one of the treaty that WIPO administers. And in the Patent Cooperation Treaty translation division, we work with 10 languages. We work with the 6 UN languages. So we work with English, French, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, plus 4 more languages that are of interest to the patent world. And those are Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, and German. So this is already a palette of languages that it's not common to find in an international organization. And another aspect of the work that I think it's very interesting when we talk about terminology is the nature of the text that we are dealing with. So patents are legal, technical texts. They are made up of lots of jargon, formulaic language, but a lot of terms, okay, scientific and technical terms. These could be key terms in a field, in a specialty field, or could be cutting edge terms that nobody has ever seen. So you see the challenge for translators when they are presented these kind of texts. And terminology is helping translators and is a foundation of quality in our world, because it can help not only translators but also drafters to use terminology consistently, and also to identify certain descriptions that sometimes can be mistaken for terminological units. And we harvest the terminology in our internal database that is hooked up in the translation management management systems, and also is helping to enhance the neural machine translation engines that we have in-house. And so terminology has been used as a high quality data set in order to improve the output of NMT. And what I wanted to say is that we also have a public portal that is called WIPO Pearl. And in this portal, we present terminology in a way that it's not only useful for language experts, but it's also useful for all the wider IP community. And I'm thinking particularly of lawyers, examiners, researchers who need to understand patents, patent text, and can use and will use our portal in order to convey specialized language and enhance specialized communication. So for us at WIPO, terminology is also a foundation of specialized communication.
Thank you very much. And since you're there, so I wanted to ask you, because I mean, it was very interesting in our exchanges in preparing for this panel. You mentioned something which I found very, very interesting, that, you know, depending on the geographical context, basically terminology may be seen as more closely to translation, in other contexts, more closely to communication, etc. So could you share how you think terminology should be understood today, so that new professionals, emerging professionals in particular, recognize its scope and potential for quality?
Yeah, I think that, you know, first and foremost, we have to get rid of a common misconception, okay? That's been already mentioned by my colleagues. Terminologists do not translate terms, okay? So we analyze concepts. We find and identify the best designations for that concept in a specific language. So it's about understanding language, understanding meaning, and structuring meaning in knowledge systems, okay? So I think that it's very important to understand terminology today, also to put the focus on this aspect, which is not new. This is an old principle of terminology theory, concept orientation. So thinking about concepts and not only about semantic relations, for example, or at the semantic level of language. So I think that if we switch and we put the focus on concept analysis and concept relations identification and structuring knowledge, then we can really see the full potential of terminology. And to get back to one of the comments has already been done by the colleague on stage, today NLP experts think that AI system will exhaust available data very soon. And I'm thinking about, in particular, about the way in which terminology can help in that regard. So it's not about adding more data, it's about adding high quality data, okay? And it's in this form that terminology can help. And in particular in languages that are not underrepresented, for which, you know, relying on a single pivot language like English can cause bias, okay? And for which otherwise the prospect is to rely on synthetic data, okay? So I think there's a lot for terminology. There's lots of potential in this sense as well.
Thank you very much for this hopeful message as well. Jourik, as a tech and buyer-side expert, I would say, so how do clients see terminology or understand terminology today? Do they see it at all, for example? And in that context, when does AI genuinely, you know, contributes to improving the quality, and when, on the opposite, you know, undermines it?
So clients absolutely see it, for sure. I think it's like one of the few linguistic resources that our clients never ever take for granted, and that's very, very important. You know, they actively ask about it. You know, Elan languages, thank you very much. All the AI things are great, but what are you going to do with my terminology? Because it's so extremely crucial. they also find terminology mistakes themselves quite quickly and easily, and which is a very good thing, of course. They are willing to get their hands dirty and work with us, you know, collaborate with us to keep the terminology clean and updated. And finally, this is very important, I think, for us as language experts. There's a lot of room to generate true added value for our buyers, because we can operate as consultants and we can really, you know, advise our clients in the road to a proper terminology program. For example, if you work with a software company, it is a very good practice to take the UI strings and leverage them directly as terminology for the technical documentation, the marketing collateral, and other content types. That is a very simple step, but a very efficient one, and clients really value that kind of insight, and when you as a provider think along. And there are other things you can do, of course, like, you know, managing different versions of your terminology, a very comprehensive glossary for your linguists with all bells and whistles, a more distilled one for quality evaluation, an optimized one for AI purposes, etc. and so on. So terminology is not a matter of opening a spreadsheet and dumping terms in it. There's a lot more to it, and clients know that. And yeah, again, it's not taken for granted, so that's very important. When it comes to AI, I already told how enthusiastic I am about it, and you didn't throw eggs or tomatoes at me, so that's very good. Nevertheless, there are dangers when it comes to using AI, and I think the biggest dangers are unrealistic expectations and insufficient preparation. So it needs to be understood that AI is not a matter of using ChatGPT or plugging in a language model and then expecting it to produce miracles. It's not a quick way of cutting costs at all costs. It's not a quick way of replacing your human stakeholders and have a machine manage your terminology and translate your entire content stack. And that sounds so very obvious, but it needs to be understood. So I would say that AI is not the enemy. AI is not the problem. Our way of using AI can be a problem.
Great answer. Thank you. So Maria, now, you know, I mean, in large-scale institutional settings, of course, a large share of, you know, translation work is usually outsourced. So how important is it to embed terminology at the right moment in the production chain and or workflow? And how has this evolved with new technologies, including AI, but not only? And are there any cases that you would like to highlight in particular?
I don't know. Yeah. Okay, I can say. Yes, definitely. I think it won't be an error to say that we are all fighting against the time, and it's not different in a big organization. So I think whether it's a company or not, the question I always ask myself, it is at which stage we could help the most. So the obvious thing would be to see the difference between what happens when we outsource a translation. So, and then what happens when our in-house colleagues get it? What do we miss there? Do they have the same resources, and when? So paradoxically, it would seem that the freelancers, poor things, that they have less care, they have less resources. But actually, when our terminologists get to work on the documents which are already assigned for translation, they are working at the same time with the translators. So there is no free period for them for preparatory work. It starts at the same time, while the freelancers, sometimes they get it later. So actually they can be the lucky ones and can get already terminology extractions for their term bases or other supporting materials, terminology stuff that actually is not there, is being done while the translation is ongoing. So that's I think it's a paradox, because we would think that there is not an equal treatment, maybe they don't have the same things and so on. But the difference is only about being embedded in the workflow or having a different workflow. Now, what can we do with the technology helps us, for example, at very early stage. We have an in-house prototype, which I think you have heard all about. It's Termite One. It's an AI-supported tool, which really is very, very efficient in extracting terminology. But apart from the fact that you could use your brilliant LLMs, other LLMs, for doing the same thing, if you have a smart prompt, our Termite One has also other functions. It checks in IATA for us, the presence, the occurrence across, for example, we have an aggregation function. So when we deal with, for example, 5 documents in a dossier, we can check where the terminology appears in which documents across, which is super relevant because it also gives us the information where to start working. Yes, we're also working on devising a kind of let's say score, I would call it like this, a terminology complexity score that would help us to know whether this document contains potentially a lot of terminology that is not already covered. That in IATA we don't have that. Or for example, it is covered, but we are missing, we have 24 languages, so we're missing, let's say 20. Yeah, we've got only 3. That kind of information really helps us. This is the future, it's upcoming. That would really help us in making faster decisions about, yes, I'm going to work on this file. Yes, this file is going to have interesting terminology. Another thing about time and being fast with translations and having good terminology is also we can imagine a use case. Let's imagine the Commission releases press releases, the journalists come and they of course get it in English, the information. What are they doing? They're running back to their journals and they're writing their stuff in their own languages. Before maybe they have checked the terminology, before maybe an official statement has been translated in all the documents. What happens next? They are proliferating their own versions of documents, of titles, of initiatives, of projects, and so on. So this is I would say, a very unequal situation where we can't fight the time. But definitely we should show that we have IATA, we have other resources that are public, that we have the go-to places, and that, doing terminology as early as possible, as fast as possible, using all these tools, smart tools to do that, it's the only way, actually.
Great, thank you. And now a question to all of you. If you were to think of us, or in 5 years' time, in 2030, and to give an advice on the positioning of emerging professional vis-à-vis terminology, what that would be? Who would like to go first?
Can I go?
Go.
It's still working fine, my mic. Okay. For me, I'm biased, but for me, it's the data quality. I have to deal with a lot of legacy entries in IATA with maybe insufficient tools to help me to clean what is there, which evidently is an issue in everyday use. It needs some more application, some more reading in depth, whether this is what I'm really looking for. So for me, data curation, having something really good, really perfect. We also hear about AI-ready data, whatever it is, whether it's AI or any other machine readable or any other application. Once we have good data, when we really the data is something that we can rely on, and it should contain as much relationships which will allow us to build, I don't know, knowledge graphs, take out semantics, do something more. If the data is only like humanly structured and done manually and we are unsure of its quality, it will be very difficult to get out reliable results. Feed it into a machine and say, okay, give me these results, fine. But then how can I be sure? So for me, terminologists I see them as open-minded people who are trying to, with their linguistic knowledge, And with their understanding of this concept approach that Cristina mentioned, they are going to change the way to introduce, to make sure that the databases that they build are actually kind of future-proof, yeah? What we want to have, but data quality first. Thank you.
Thank you.
My prediction applies to the translation profession in general, but I think that the future is being shaped right now as we speak. So translation is evolving, and translation used to be this clunky process, you know, driven by manual triggers and emails and documents and attachments. And today, it's something else. Today, it's a component which is embedded in a more complex multilingual ecosystem characterized by different platforms and automations and sophisticated workflows and measuring impact and intent, which was coined in the previous panel, rather than linguistic, pure linguistic quality. And I think the skill set of us linguists and language practitioners needs to evolve accordingly. What does that mean? First of all, we need to master our language skills, obviously, but we also need to know what AI can do and cannot do, and really know it, you know, not making an emotional judgment, but really know what AI can and cannot do. We need to know how to write the perfect prompt. We need to be proactive when it comes to implementing and suggesting technology towards our buyers. And finally, as I already mentioned, we need to take on this consulting role towards our buyers, including but not limited to terminology. And maybe one more general remark about our profession in general. There's one theory that I choose to believe in. It's the Jevons paradox. For people who don't know it, the Jevons paradox says that if technological advancements allow us to use resources more efficiently, in the end, it will lead to higher consumption of those resources. And I think that applies to translation as well. More AI will only lead to more consumption of translation services. There is so many content out there waiting for us to be translated, and we will need technology, we will need you, humans, and we will need very good terminology to make that happen.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Cristina.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think we are making the future as we speak, you know, in terminology as well as in translation. And the way I see it, especially in international organizations, is that terminologists are very often relegated, I would say, in translation silos, and they have difficulties in talking to other departments. And so one suggestion that I would give to terminologists is that they should move from behind the scenes and start to work more into the spotlight and take center stage, okay, in organizations and companies. So their role, I think, should be a cross-functional role, cross-departmental. They could offer a lot of services to different parts of the organization, and they could work very closely with knowledge documentation units, management units, database management units, which are fundamental to an organization's infrastructure, and also IT departments, which they can help enhance, you know, the systems. So I agree with my colleagues on this, and I'm happy that you know, we're moving in the right direction in some organizations.
Thanks. As Beate in the previous panel was saying, talk, right? I mean,
yeah.
Make your work visible, more visible. So before we go to the Q&A, I'd like now to ask each one of you a key takeaway or wisdom pearl, if you want to call it that way. You know, from today's discussion, of course, but what's the one thing you would like our audience to, you know, to remember as they move forward in their career as well?
My takeaway, the thing that I've learned today in this session is that, and it kind of resonates with Cristina's input, again, terminology is a lot more than just spreadsheets and dumping terms in it. Terminology is a component in multilingual content management, and we can even go one step further and say that terminology is knowledge or even intelligence. So again, terminology has always been the backbone of language operations, and if deployed properly with the right vision and with the right touch of AI, I think it will also be the backbone of the future language profession.
This is totally unfair, because this was supposed to be my turn. So I can even show
Please don't
you.
fight.
It is there, so I don't know how this happened. But, okay, so my takeaway would be very more, let's say, focused on people. So I think that we should, you should, and I'm in the same card, we should consider us as data curators and as people who look at terminology not like a side product of translation, only in the perspective of translation, but something like we are going forward, we're going to create data, we're going to curate it. Curation means a lot. And by this activity, we're also looking how this can be consumed, how we can do better, and how brilliant ideas we can implement using terminology. It's not cutting off your own branch, it's the other way around. I think that we are all super intelligent and smart, and by knowing your core business, and having this skill of translating and understanding terminology, we will super well do with like going forward with this communication with machines, with data curating. I think this is where it's not only a shift in the name. I think this is where we are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Cristina?
Yes, actually, it's quite funny you're asking for a wisdom pearl, because our term base is called WIPO Pearl.
I'm biased.
And yes, so I can also maybe share something about the name. So when we were trying to, find a name for this new resource, we also thought about and retain in the end pearl, because pearl means piece of jewelry, means gem. So something that it's worth nurturing, cultivating, and giving attention to. So as a suggestion to young professionals, I would say study terminology, learn about terminology, and terminology can really be the ace up your sleeve, okay, that you can use and can help you not only use better the new AI tools, the new LLMs, but also can position yourself as one of the actors, the main actors and drivers of the AI revolution, okay, and help build more high quality, trustworthy, and also environmental and sustainable systems in AI.
Thank you. So now let's turn to our audience with the Q&A. We can start online with Slido if you have any questions. Otherwise, in the meantime, we can take some questions from the room here. Yes, Anna.
No. Yeah. Maybe my question is a bit selfish, but I wanted to ask you, what would you teach in a translation course about terminology nowadays? What would be your fundamental things that a translator should learn about terminology?
Thank you. Who would like to go?
Maybe.
Oh, yes, go, Cristina.
I can take it, since we have quite a lot of experience in working with universities. We have partnerships all around the world, and in which students help us build WIPO Pearl, and we teach terminology. So we give webinars, guidelines, instructions, and what we teach is first and foremost these the concept analysis. So what is a concept? What is the relationship of terms with concepts? and how to find evidence, okay, for use of terms and in authentic, trustworthy resources. These are really the main elements that we teach when we talk to students. Sometimes these students are part of translation classes, so they do the terminology collaboration with us in their translation classes. Sometimes they are taking translation terminology they are part of terminology modules. In other cases, they're also working as a master's thesis. So in master's thesis. So I think there is a lot for them to learn, and it's not in Europe. It's quite a standard practice to include terminology in our translation courses. But our experience with other countries outside Europe, for example, China, Korea, America, the US to a certain extent, terminology is not taught all the time when a translation class is given. So there's a lot of scope, I think, there for for training and upgrading the skills of translators.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, over there. Yeah, you.
May I?
Yes.
So for those who were
Well, okay, go ahead.
there this morning for the plain language sessions and here now for the terminology session, both of which I admire and respect, how do we reconcile them fully? Is technical terminology part of plain language, or do we try to exclude it?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a matter of in or out, depending on the purpose of, the document that you're rewriting or whatever. You would basically handle your terminology differently by explaining it, for example. And that was also coined this morning. Plain language doesn't necessarily mean less words. It can perfectly mean more words to get to the objective of creating plain language. So I wouldn't look at this as a matter of either you use it, either you don't use it. I would say come up with a way of, blending technical terminology with plain language or a certain language level. How is that done? I think there are different possibilities depending on the document or the content type.
If I may add also the specificity of the document. I mean, in DGT case, we've got the majority of documents are legal acts. I can hardly imagine replacing technical terms with plain words, like, I don't know, if we're talking about stomach ulcers, and I would say that it's whatever. So it has to be exact. So for me, in technical terms, in texts, in legislation, what really matters is what has been used now and the correctness, so that the meaning is conveyed very clearly. And there, I don't think that you have a lot of space for this kind of creativity, let's say, that is accepted and pushed for in any other fields or in any other types of texts. It's so much different when you do, I don't know, even speeches or press releases or instructions about something that are addressed to people so that they understand how to deal with them, than when it is really supposed to be law. That makes a great difference. So I think the answer lies in the document type and being able to decide what kind of methodology we use and what should we use, so that the text is correct.
Yes, and over there. Thank you. Try again.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. It is on now. Hey, thank you very much for all of the insights you've shared so far. This might be a question more specifically, I believe it's Jourik, thinking, you mentioned that we might expect an increase in demand for language services. I guess I was curious, from your perspective, more involved with AI technologies and machine translation, how much of that do you think will likely be human, or some of these new technologies of simultaneous translation in earbuds? I know that they're still at this point where I'm speaking to somebody in Portuguese and it says, he says, "Eu sou de madeira," and it translates, "I'm from wood." But when might we have this leap of it being able to account for terminology and context to the point where it could translate like jurisprudence for Spain and Mexico correctly? In Mexico it means something very different. Would we expect that there might be sort of that leap that would be, driving much more of the demand towards pure machine?
That's a very good question. There is an unofficial statistic saying that 99.9% of all the translated content on this planet is never ever touched by a human professional. So I think, to answer your question, a great deal of this new content out there will probably go to machines. But I don't think that is a matter of taking away content from the human professional. I think that is a way, a solution to translate content that otherwise would not get translated. And there, it's a very good solution to go for a machine translation if you calculate the risks properly, etc. and so on. I think in general, if you want to have human quality output, there are certain pieces of content where you just need a human to have it translated. I think, for example, of high traffic content on your website. Please don't give that to a machine. Have it translated by a human. And I think it also implies that we need to manage our content more intelligently and make a very good decision about which content needs to go to our humans, which content can be processed by a human and a machine, and which content can go to the machine directly.
Basically a tiering system in a way, yeah. So just a second, because I'd like to also to go with some question from Slido. A very interesting one, hypothetical question. How would your work change if English was taken out of the equation? English seems like the backbone of most terminology work. Plus, it's a favored online language and by LLMs. Would like to take that one?
Well, let's imagine that English is not there. Then we start speaking French or something next. I mean, I think we will manage. There is no such situation that people deprived of one solution will die out. They will certainly find something else. So there I wouldn't worry. Of course, what would be a problem is that we are used to certain our workflows and tools, which we use because we have these resources. So if we don't have something that we are using, well, we'll have to come up. But for example, I think that DGT is looking further. Not that it is counting on excluding English any day. But we are in course of building an EU institutional LLM, which would help us, which will help to provide solutions, AI-supported solutions for all the languages. So we are very much conscious of the fact that the commercial LLMs, the ones that are accessible all around the world, they're mostly prevalently English. And of course, as some people might say, biased of all kinds and so on. So we do want to have one to be able to use for our needs in controlled conditions, yeah, and to be able to profit from the fact that we do have resources. So now we are going to try to use them in the modern way, just as we used them before in other ways. So no worries there.
Cool. Another question from Slido. How do you see the future of terminology management tools in the age of AI? Are term bases going to be outdated? Who would own the terminology?
Cristina, that's the pearl.
That's for you, Cristina.
I think that's about copyright, right? Who owns the terminology? I don't know, it could be. I think that, you know, there are several experiences and several tools that are already trying to integrate, you know, the new LLMs and the new systems into the translation management workflow. Okay, so this is something that's been going on for a few years already, and I think it's very promising. As Maria was saying, I mean, it's the idea is that we are using something that it's an instrument, okay? It's a further instrument that can help us to make our work more efficient, more accurate, and there are an enormous amount of potential with the using of LLMs. And I think term bases will still exist. They will exist because they are structured data sets. Okay, I think that's the key, the most important aspect of terminology databases, that they are structured. So if we go back to the very first principle that we were discussing, concept orientation, if we think that each record is a concept, then in each record you list all the languages and you provide evidence for use of the terms that actually correspond to that concept, that you have a structure which could be leveraged by new system and new AI tools. So terminology databases, as we know them, maybe would need to be updated in certain ways, but they won't disappear. They will become even more central to the discussion.
Thank you. And I think we have just time for one more question from the room. I saw some hands up earlier. Yes, over here.
That AI is fairly suitable for terminology. I did some experiments, I would agree with that. But also when people are using semantic databases, the lookup is by definition quite different. Could you speak a little about what are your recommendations for which use cases and maybe what to be aware of?
Sure. I think it also aligns a little bit with the previous question. I think, you know, having dedicated tools for terminology isn't maybe a priority for our industry, because we have LLMs now and we have, you know, other advanced NLP techniques like RAG, retrieval augmented generations, and we have agents now who can autonomously take decisions and grab pieces of reference materials and do with it whatever needs to be done, whether that's leveraging it for terminology or for other purposes. So I think terminology will be embedded in more of our resources, and if it's leveraged as terminology, that will be our decision. For example, when we build an agent, an AI agent, when we say, look, here are your reference materials, and what I want you to do is look at them and leverage them for terminology. And that is one example of a potential terminology application without having a proper term base in place.
Good. So thank you very much. We are at the end of this session. I hope you enjoyed it. So I will just like to make a round of applause for the panelists.